All right, I'm here with my new friend Rosa Weiner. Unfortunately, I don't have my normal Yak Cam set up here. I'm here. We are building our new modern musician studio, but I still had and Rosa. You probably are on where you're like, what is this? The weird Yak Cam. Usually, I have like the yeah there, but I'm
We're
really
here for
excited
it.
to connect today. So a
Yeah,
little bit about
same.
Rosa. She began as a solo artist and a session vocalist. Transitioned into music journalism, and she's written for publications like Liverpool Noise. She has experience in A&R and artist relations, has worked in the events industry, indie labels, and she's been responsible for looking for talent, assisting as an artist liaison and marketing. And she's a digital marketing manager at Oris Music. So she leads the marketing departments. They focus on social media, B2B marketing, and digital PR campaigns for emerging global artists. So
Bit of a
really looking
mouthful.
forward to connecting with her today and talking a little bit about the state of the music industry as it relates to independent music artists and distribution, marketing, navigating what's a rapidly changing landscape. And so, Rosa, thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It makes me sound so impressive when you list off that many things, but hopefully I can give some good insights and be helpful for your community. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. One thing I forgot to mention too is that one of Rosa's favorite things in the world are giant spiders. So if anyone has giant spiders that they want to send to her house, then
I
the
think
link in
I'd
the show
cry.
notes.
Definitely no spiders, please. But files and hugs are fine.
Awesome. So let's kick things off. I'd love to hear just a little bit about your story, Rosa, and how you got started and learn some of the lessons that we're gonna be talking through today.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, my entire music love started at a very, very young age. So, I started playing guitar when I was only 4 years old, believe it or not. So, kind of established from that and just got into kind of gigging in my teens and realized that, okay, music was what I wanted to do. So, I went on to study at the University of Liverpool. So, I did popular music with a focus on popular performance. And then I spent a lot of time gigging in original projects, writing a lot of my own songs, kind of collaborating with other musicians. And that's kind of when I stumbled into music journalism. So I was kind of writing for quite a few magazines at the time, and it was all digital print back then, so all very exciting. So I got sent to do quite a lot of reviews for bands like Cage the Elephant, Lapsley, and Ex Easter Island Head, and it was great. I mean, I was a teenage, like not a teenager, but in university, and kind of getting to gig all the time, and then getting to see these amazing bands. And at that point, I kind of thought, okay, music journalism is definitely for me. I'm loving writing about all these people. This is so cool. And yeah, from there, I finished uni, realized that it's actually really hard to make it in the music industry, not just as an artist, but in the business itself. So I started working as a general manager in a pub, as we all do. We kind of do that grind and do the kind of the fun bit on the side, if you will. So I was still gigging at the same time, kind of funding the music stuff as much as I could, and gigging and recording, played a couple of festivals. And then it kind of all came to a head that I was like, oh, I really love this performing, but maybe I'm a little bit more suited to the business, really. So I then started working at a music studio, which offered lessons at the same time. So there was kind of the more recording side of it, and then the kids learning. It was up to kind of my oldest student at one point was 80. So a really nice broad spectrum, but it was kind of getting into the kind of the education and learning side of things alongside the music studio that was running. So I kind of went back to when I was, that little 4-year-old knocking on a door saying, please, can I have lessons? And I really wanted to kind of develop kids at an early age to kind of give them as many experiences as I could. So I created a band program for musicians who were between the ages of 6 and 18, got in a professional mentor for them. We worked towards kind of writing original music. How does that all piece together? Which I don't really feel like was something I had. That kind of got figured out when I got older, but it was really great to kind of do that. And then we'd do like performances for them with up to, 300, 400 people. Granted, a lot of it was parents and family members who were coming, but for, young children, that's a really fundamental experience. And I was doing a lot of other events for the kind of record label side, a lot of PR for that at the same time. For some of the artists that we were working with, I got to go out and scout. So it was a really, really varied job. But the problem was it was very in-person and hands-on. So then, of course, COVID hit. And like many of us, my job kind of just disappeared. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, I still really want to stay in music. And I was lucky enough to stumble across the company that I work at now, which is Horus Music. So that was working in digital distribution. So a lot of that was focused on just getting releases onto DSP. So by that, digital streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and working literally just day to day with artists, solving their queries. And then from there, it just kind of expanded into marketing, and I'm just, I already had experience in that and they needed someone, and there I was. And then from there, I've kind of just been doing a lot of strategies, working with artists on their marketing plans, kind of higher caliber artists, and supporting them as best I can with their marketing activities. And here we are today.
Awesome. So it sounds like you really had sort of a heart and a core, and being a musician yourself, and that's sort of expanded and blossomed into being able to serve and help other artists as well.
100%.
I'm curious, having both the experience of of your own, of learning how to distribute, market yourself, and working with a lot of other artists now as well. What are some of the biggest challenges or mistakes that you see artists struggling with right now as it relates to marketing their music?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's very different from when I was putting out music. I mean, we're in this huge digital age now of social media and everything's got to be so instant. But some of the biggest challenges that I would say, I mean, there's so many avenues that we could go down this, but just kind of relate into what my role is at the minute. It's kind of struggling to get heard above the noise. And by the noise, I mean the amount of tracks that are being released every day onto digital streaming platforms. Spotify alone, there's 100,000 tracks every single day that are going live. So as a DIY artist, how are you meant to navigate and find your way in that space, really? So that's kind of the biggest challenge that I think artists are facing. And with that comes things like burnout, it's lack of experience, it's feeling like they have to be everything for themselves. So their own booking agent, manager, social media manager, content creator. There's just so many roles that you have to play as an independent artist. And it's trying to kind of break through that noise and find your own path and find your fan base, not necessarily with the support of a label like the traditional model in the music industry would have been.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is sort of like the biggest challenge is sort of a lack of being able to cut through the noise. There's so much music. It's so saturated, and gosh, with advancements in AI, generative music as well, you got to imagine that that's just going to get more and more difficult to kind of cut through. And so learning how to cut through the noise, how to connect with a fan base. And what have you found right now? There's some interesting ways that artists are able to approach that challenge, be able to overcome it and build a community and be able to cut through the noise.
Definitely. I mean, the biggest thing I always say to my artists that I work with is knowledge is power. Every time you go into a situation, if you have a solid understanding and you have that education behind you, you can navigate anything. If you're going into something blind, whether it's just releasing for the first time and you click a button, you've uploaded and then it goes live in the ether, you're just going to get lost. So having that knowledge of how platforms work, how does distribution work, how does marketing work, what are the best things that I can do to really get myself heard? There's so many different things that I could, give you tips about. But I think some of the biggest kind of things that a lot of artists often overlook are things like literally just keeping your Spotify up to date. I mean, it's the biggest platform. I'm only using it as one example. I know it's not everybody's preferred method, but as a blanket, Spotify is the kind of go-to, isn't it? So things like on there, when you've got your bio, making sure that's on there. So if somebody stumbles across your page, they can read something about you. Making sure that your social media links are on there, so that if they want to go and find out a little more about you, usually it's Instagram. They can click and go and join your community and find out more about you. And things like that, when you're looking at trying to get on a playlist, for example, is really, really key. If a playlist curator is coming across and they go, oh, I really like this music that you've pitched them. If they can't find anything else about you on your page, then they're probably going to overlook you a little bit, no matter how great you are. So they're kind of like some really basic fundamentals that quite a lot of artists don't really realize. And on top of that, there's kind of spreading yourself too thin. So that particularly comes into play when we're talking about social media. So obviously there's so many different platforms out there, Instagram, Facebook, X, which was formerly Twitter, TikTok, and artists kind of feel that pressure, particularly independent and DIY artists, that they have to be present on every single platform because then they're more discoverable and more people can find you. But in reality, if you're not able to really populate those pages and really make the most out of them, you're kind of flogging a dead horse to a degree, because you're just going to end up not having that much content, not feeling like you're that present, and the fans that are trying to connect with you on those platforms are going to find it a little bit difficult. So I'd always say kind of pick you on. If you are, a content queen, that is great. Absolutely go for it if you feel like that's what you can do, and repurposing is also fine. But I think a lot of people are trying a little bit hard to be everything to everyone, and it's not always the right way to go about it. And it loops back into that burnout that a lot of DIY artists, we are doing this ourselves, aren't we? So it is a bit of a difficult one to navigate. So I think there are a couple of the key challenges and kind of what I'd say and give some advice to people to do, really.
Got it. Yeah. So real quick, I just want to see if I heard you right. Did you say flogging a dead horse? Was that the phrase?
I did.
Okay. Flogging a dead horse. I've heard of like beating a dead horse, but flogging is like new to my vernacular.
You can try that.
Does flogging mean like beating it, or is like, what does flogging mean exactly?
It's kind of like trying to pull it along, like keep something going when it's clearly not working. I think that's the best way I can explain it.
Got it. Yeah, flogging a dead horse. I think I might adopt that way of saying it instead of beating a dead horse.
Let me know how it goes.
I'll do the giant spiders flogging dead horses. I've got a little checklist here of things I need to like work into my daily life after this meeting.
Excellent.
So it sounds like, one of the first things you recommend is just really like having your foundation set up. So, making sure that the platforms that you're on, if you're using Spotify, for example, that you do have your bio set up, you have some of the basics, you have your links set up, and making sure that with social media, you don't get too overwhelmed with being on every platform without actually like putting out content, because then it's just sort of not really contributing to your online presence. I think one next question would be around just like building an audience in the first place. Like, let's say that someone, hypothetically, they have sort of built a foundation where they kind of have their system set up to connect with their fans more, and they have some initial foundation, and they're trying to figure out, man, how do I just reach people who aren't just my friends and my family, but are actually like fans of the music, and build a real relationship and a real community? What are some tips or recommendations you'd have for them to help them to start to grow?
Sure. I mean, the biggest thing that you'd need to start with is, who do you want your audience to be? Because you can't just pluck that out of thin air. You know what I mean? So you've kind of really got to think, okay, who do I want to be listening to my music? What kind of demographic likes my music? Is it going to be, Gen Z, or is it going to be kind of like older people? Who am I really wanting to resonate with? And I think finding your audience first, actually, and like who you want to connect with, really helps you to kind of build on top of that. So especially with social media now, you can do a lot of things like using ads, and once you've kind of got that demographic down, it makes it a lot easier to find people. Say you're a singer-songwriter writing love songs, and you want to connect with people who are ages 25 to 35. Done. That's nice and easy. But I mean, I think, having a clear direction of where you want to be, and like that also applies to whether you want to be out gigging all the time, whether you're looking to get a sync license, whether you're looking to, just be a ghostwriter and do recording for people. Again, having a really clear direction of who you want to be will then help you find your audience. If what you actually want to do is be out gigging all the time, you're going to find fans naturally through that way, hopefully, as long as you've got a good live show. So that would be an organic way of going about it. But again, if it really just depends what your direction is and what you want to do.
Got it. Yeah. So it sounds like, a good starting point is sort of getting clear on who do you want your audience to be? Who do you want to be in your community? And if you know that, then you can start to have a clue in terms of where do those people congregate. If you're a live show, if you want to, build an audience that's going to come out to your live shows, then one of the best ways to do it is by finding the people who are already going out to live shows and starting to connect with that community, opening for other artists at live shows. How about, let's imagine kind of the next step. Like, let's say that someone has identified what they think is going to be their community of people that resonate with their music. And I'm sure that, there's a two-way kind of process where sometimes people might think like, I think my audience is going to be this way. And then it turns out, oh, it's actually like, these are the people that really resonate most with the music. We kind of have that like two-way sync. But, let's imagine that someone has, done that initial foundation work, and they've gotten some clear ideas on what kind of people they want to spend time with, what kind of people they want to hang out with, and they want to bring into their community. How do they approach those people, and how do they actually build an initial relationship and take someone from being a complete stranger to someone that's a fan of their music?
Sure. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can go about it. Again, what I mentioned before, just about ads, that's kind of an easy way of, trying to attract people, particularly to your social media pages. You can look at things like tools that different DSPs have to offer as well. So things like Spotify have the discovery mode tool. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's basically like an automatic tool that Spotify have integrated for eligible artists to add them to things like Spotify Radio and autoplay. So, when you finish listening to a playlist and some tracks come on after that, it's kind of like suggestions for you. So that's a really good way to organically, get people listening to you and finding who you are. And then I think it's also to do with the content that you put out. I think a lot of the time, what we're seeing now is that social media is such a key tool for people. It's such a great way of connecting with fans. I mean, it does have its downsides, obviously, but for independent artists in particular, like literally just having content that's relatable, it all goes feeds back into that lovely algorithm that we all love. And I think that's a really good way of connecting with fans. But I think once those fans have stumbled across you, it's about how once they've kind of found you, whether it be through something like a playlist or they've gone to a gig or they've stumbled across your social media page, it's about what can you do then to keep them and entice them and keep them as long-term fans, really. So I always suggest to kind of the artists that I work with, maybe do try and integrate things like creating a community. So things like maybe a newsletter, something like a Patreon's a really good thing, especially for DIY artists. It kind of creates that community element that you're kind of giving something back to your fans and having that kind of more engaging content that I mean, it is all about content creation, isn't it, really, and what you're putting out. But I think, yeah, having something where they really feel a part of something does tend to work quite well. So once they've kind of found you, making sure, okay, you're saying hi. A lot of people have like broadcast channels and things like that you can join now. So that would kind of be my best piece of advice. Like, make sure that when they found you, you've got something to say and something to give back.
Awesome. Yep. So it sounds like a few ideas are there's actually tools built into a lot of these platforms like Spotify and with social media where you can actually target and advertise your music to new people.
Yeah.
And then once they're a fan of your music, then you recommend building more of a community around that relationship and having an email list and potentially having a membership area where you can connect more with those fans. It's probably worth me mentioning. We have a platform, a software as a service that we've been building called Street Team. That is sort of like if Patreon and Discord and Notion had a baby. Then it's sort of like a community type of platform that is really designed to help artists connect with their fans. So I would be remiss not to mention that, for anyone here who's looking to build their community, that we've created this, this offering. Unfortunately, right now, at the time of recording this, it's in private beta. So we're using it with our clients, but very soon it'll be available for everyone who's listening to this. And so I can't wait to share that with more people. But
that's exactly what I'm saying. People need that. It sounds like you've built the tool that we're all after.
I mean, everything you're talking about just rings true because that's what we've heard over and over and over again as well from our artists as well. And so part of what we built is so that awesome people like yourself and for the whole community can be able to build a community around your music and do it in a way that you have more ownership of it as well, as opposed to like, on MySpace or Facebook, where you kind of have this external platform where you don't have that direct email list or that direct connection with people. Maybe a good next question would be around monetization and making music sustainable. So let's imagine that an artist has kind of done all these steps up to this point, and they've actually started to build a bit of a community, and they actually have their first 300, 500, 1,000 people on their email list. And now they're kind of wondering, okay, like I can see people are liking the music, but it's not really making any money right now. And so I'm kind of relying on a different form of income to kind of pay the bills. Do you have any recommendations for helping artists to generate revenue with those communities, or any interesting ideas or advice that you have for artists as it relates to monetization?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll go into kind of some more like merchandise, that kind of ideas. But I think like it's really important again to go back to basics, really. Distributing your music, you're automatically generating royalties. That, I mean, it's not a huge income depending on the number of streams that you're getting from different DSPs, but that is revenue at the end of the day. So through your distributor, you should automatically be collecting. Another one that's often really overlooked is publishing. So within music publishing, people actually think that your mechanical royalties are only collected through your distributor. That's not true. We're here to myth bust. Your publisher is also collecting for that. So what that means is every time that your music is streamed or downloaded, your publisher is actually automatically collecting royalties for that as well. And, your music publisher as well can collect things for like live performances, even for your set list. So making sure that your basic admin is covered, and you would be surprised how many royalties you can uncover through having a music publisher in place. And I will just give myself a little plug as well, because we've just launched a new package at Horus Music, our new Horus Music publishing service. And we've launched a Publishing Plus service as well, which is offering sync. But it is fundamental to make sure that your basic admin is covered, and that will give you a source of income. And then like we can move on to, like I said before, things like merchandise is a massive one. Even if it's just selling a t-shirt with your name on at your gigs, you can actually integrate your merch sales into some platforms as well. And again, if you've got a little community that something like Patreon or your guys' very exciting upcoming platform, that's another space to be able to offer your fans something that can go for things like vinyl. And so there's plenty of different options of how to monetize. But my advice when I speak to artists at all levels is make sure that your basics are covered, because you will be surprised how much money you can actually uncover.
Awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like a few of the big ones are foundational. So like your streaming royalties, even if it's not a lot, money is money. So you don't just leave it on the table. And that's great that you have publishing services as well. So like sync licensing and having placements on TV and film, and membership, so fan subscriptions, an opportunity, merchandise, a big opportunity, live shows, big opportunity. Got it. And one question I have for you in general is, as it relates to where things are at currently with AI in music and where things are headed. I'm curious to hear your general perspective on, at least at the time of recording this, it's kind of a hot topic and very controversial, because for the first time ever, like, we have the ability to generate very good sounding music just with like a text prompt. And so I think there's a lot of concerns right now for artists around their livelihoods potentially being replaced with this like AI generative music. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on the current state of music and generative AI, and in your perspective, where do you think things are headed?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of AI, really, not in a kind of wider conversation, but I mean specifically for music. I do think it's, like you say, it's caused independent artists in particular quite a lot of problems, and that extends up the chain to bigger artists. Some people have been duplicated. I mean, it creates a whole major issue for artists of what is authentic, what's fair to generate royalties. I mean, we had this issue a couple of years ago with content ID services, and that, it's so easy to, I don't want to say get away, but get away with uploading work that's not necessarily yours, and earning a lot of money for that, and taking a large portion of the streaming revenue and up, really. So I'm not really the biggest fan of it. I think because it is still such a new topic, a lot of DSPs, obviously we're direct partners at Horus Music with most major DSPs. So they're still navigating it and trying to work out what actually isn't acceptable and what's fair to artists, because there has been such a big uproar and backlash against it, that at the minute there is just this underlying uncertainty for everybody, and nobody quite knows what to handle it. But it's about having, the right tools in place to be able to find out when something has been created with AI. Also making sure that, the artists who are actually genuine, and by genuine I mean, or like creating their music from scratch, or without the use of AI, are still getting a fair share of the royalty pools. And I think that's kind of the biggest concern that we've seen. But yeah, it's not really for me, if I'm honest, in respect to music. I prefer just old school, listening to someone with their guitar and singing away.
And you mentioned something about CDs too. You're like, like I like CDs.
I still collect CDs. My car has a CD player in. I'm very old school.
Awesome. I mean, that definitely makes sense, and I think that it seems like a lot of the concerns are valid from a standpoint of it's like the Wild West, and we just don't know how this type of technology long term will affect our roles. And it does sort of seem like a similar wave when digital downloads kind of became a thing with LimeWire and with like illegal downloads of songs. I think like most people could kind of sense that like this is wrong or like this or like there's something like yeah this is um it's but it was also like this technology was totally new and it was expanding the networking ability. It was just expanding what was possible to do with music. And so it seemed like we needed sort of a regulatory like some kind of way to do it correctly, and that's where like the iTunes store found its footing in creating like an established legitimate authentic way to like compensate people for their artwork. And I guess you could argue like I know Spotify gets kind of a bad rap sometimes because yeah, the monetization model is pretty broken from a standpoint of like you can't necessarily just rely on like streaming for most people. It is possible that like, if you get like a lot of streams, you can, but it just seems like for most people, that's not really like a sustainable way to make their music. But I wonder if there are, I mean, it seems like something like that's got to happen kind of with AI, right? Like I personally, like I feel like it's maybe impossible to kind of go backwards in time or kind of like cat's out of the bag. Like there's this like amazing new technology. So like I feel like it's got to be used in like some way, but it's got to be like a path through which people can be fairly compensated for their work. And we can use it in a way that doesn't like replace humans, but sort of like augments our capabilities. Like I just have this dream of being able to like sit at my keyboard and start playing a new like a little song, and then like an orchestra starts to like come behind me as I'm playing, and I start singing and it starts to like harmonize with me in real time. I just feel like that would be so cool. But I wouldn't want, I don't know, just to, like click a button. It's like, okay, like yeah, like I'm not involved at all. Like I feel like it needs to be an extension of our creativity and our ourselves.
Yeah, just like an added layer that just brings out the bits that maybe we didn't automatically hear ourselves, or pick, like you say, pick out that harmony line and layer that on the top nicely rather than being the center of attention and writing it for us. I do agree, and I do think, as I said before, in AI, in terms of a wider outside of music, I do think has done and will continue to do some amazing things. But I do think within the music industry at the minute, we just don't have enough knowledge, and we don't have enough tools, and we don't have enough manpower to really monitor it. And I think, like I said at the beginning of our chat, 100,000 tracks a day are being delivered to Spotify. How many of those are AI? How many people can monitor that and have those tools in place to detect and make sure that, if that is being put up there, independent artists in particular still getting their fair share. And I do think that's, something that DSPs are actively trying to address, but it's just kind of a question mark of when the timeline will be that something solid is in place. And protection for people is there as well, because, it is tough out there, especially as an independent. And like you say, streaming platforms at the minute don't really pay a sustainable amount of money. I mean, like we said, money is money, which is great, but it's not, long term. So if that royalty pool is shrinking even more than we already have, then it does cause a lot of concern for artists. So yeah, I do hope, like you say, there's a positive light at the end of the tunnel and that it could do some amazing things. But at the minute, for me, it's a big question mark as to how it's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the honest answer for, I don't know, like everyone like in life itself is sort of like it's like a big question mark in that everything is constantly changing and evolving and growing. So you kind of have to have like an open mind. And also, I mean, we sort of have the ability to shape our future, and by through the questions we ask and our focal points. Yeah, to your point that you brought up earlier around being intentional with your community design and kind of having a goal and setting it in your mind, like what do you want to create with this. It's pretty great that we have, I mean, us as musicians and creators, like we effectively can shape reality and we can set goals and intentions. So I'm glad that we can have conversations like this. And I know a lot
Yeah.
of people are having conversations right now about like how do we shape the future of what we're building, and how do we use these tools in a way that's congruent with our values and helps to compensate the creators as much as possible. yeah, it'll be an interesting journey.
It definitely will. And I think it's interesting as well because it goes back to the notion of knowledge is power. And when we have that knowledge, we can navigate it a little more. But I think it feeds into, other areas of the music industry as well and what's been going on. I mean, there's a lot of kind of artists as well who we see that work with like record labels, and once they've signed to a label, they think, yay, this is it, I've done it now. But that's actually not the case. And I think we're seeing a lot more artists kind of take the reins and wanting to remain independent, particularly, when they realize that most labels are going to make you sign your rights away and that you won't actually own your songs anymore. I mean, we've seen that with Taylor Swift when she released all Taylor's versions. Artists are kind of now being able to find out that information a little bit more and take the reins of their own career. And I think, it might not be AI related, but it's still that notion of once we understand, we can use those tools to the best of our ability.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Rosa, it's been great connecting today and talking a little bit about kind of the roots of building a community and building the music career DIY nowadays, and touching on the landscape of AI and how to position ourselves to hold on to our souls as we also use the tools to extend our creativity. So thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast today. And for anyone that's listening to this right now who is interested in connecting more or learning a little bit more about Horus Music and some of the services that you mentioned, what's the best place for them to go to connect more?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to chat or just find out more about distribution, publishing, marketing, anything at all, you can connect with us on Instagram at Horus Music, which is HORUS Music. Or you can email us as well at social@horusmusic.global, and you'll get straight through to myself, and then I can help you in any way that you need. But thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute ball.
Absolutely. And for our next conversation, I'll make sure that I'm prepared with a lot more giant spiders.
Thanks so much.